Hi everyone. So this is number 5 on your checklist. We're going to do the lesson about evaluating functions. Okay. So what we want to do today is we want to evaluate functions that are defined algebraically as well as the functions that are defined graphically. Okay. So at this point you should have your note sheet in front of you. You should have a pencil. Okay. Yeah, I'm using pen, but only because it shows up better on the video. All right, so why don't we get started? Okay, so in order to evaluate functions, we need to understand what function language is. Okay, in order to represent functions, we use letters like F, G, and H. Okay, the typical way a function is represented is like f of x, g of x. Okay. For whatever reason, the standard way is F, G, and H, but it doesn't really matter. All right, so the notation. Over here, the way we read this is F of 3 equals 5. All right, what does that mean? That means input, and we know input is the x is 3. Output, which is the y, is 5. Okay. All right, so if we know g of 0 equals 0, what does that mean? Well, just like the example above, this is the input, right? This is the output. All right, so what are we going to fill in the blank? Well, the input, or the x, is 0, and the output, the y, is also 0. Okay? So a less complicated way to think of what these mean is if we put in 3 into f, we get out 5. So in middle school you might have seen function machines where if you put 3 into the function machine, it gives you out 5. All right? If we have a different function machine called g instead of f that we had above, and we put 0 inside the function machine, it would give us 0 back out. Okay? So whatever is inside the parentheses is the input, whatever is next to the equal sign is the output. Okay? All right, let's take a look with that through a more concrete example. All right, so example 1, suppose we have the function f of x equals 4x plus 1. What is the value of 3? Okay, well first we have to determine, is this 3 an input or output? Well, it's inside the parentheses, so it's going to be an input. Okay, so we want to know if 3 is the input, what does this function machine give us out? Well, all we're going to do is put it inside the function machine like this. We're going to go f of 3 equals, we're just going to take that 3 and substitute it into here. Okay, and it's easy. 4 times 3 plus 1, which comes out to 12 plus 1, 13. Okay? So what this means is when our input is 3, our output is 13. All right? So when you have the input and you just need to get the output, all you're going to do is substitute into the function machine or function rule. Let's try another one. Example 2, suppose that g of x equals x squared minus 3x plus 4. What is the value of 1? Okay, well, is that 1 an input or output? You should know that it's an input because it's inside the parentheses. Okay, let's write that down. So we're going to find the output. by simply substituting. We're going to go g of 1 equals, we're going to replace the x with the 1, so 1 squared, minus 3 times 1, plus 4. Okay. All right, and 1 squared is obviously 1, minus 3, plus 4. Be careful with your signs. 1 minus 3, negative 2, plus 4 makes positive 2. All right. So again, what does this mean? What we just found was that when our input is 1, our output is 2. When we took the 1, like we were asked to by the question, and substituted in, we got out 2. Okay? All right, now I'd like you to pause the video for a minute and please go try example 3 on your own. All right, welcome back. So, to find the value of h of negative 4, well, negative 4 is an input. Okay. No, they're not always inputs. We've just had inputs the first 3 examples. Okay? So we have this function, suppose h of t, we don't always need to use x, of course, equals negative 2t cubed plus 3. Oh, now I'm writing sideways. This shooting a video while writing thing is more difficult than you might think. Okay, so h of negative 4 is going to be negative 2 times negative 4 cubed, oh, that's a bad 3, sorry, plus 3, okay. All right, let's continue on the side because I'm running out of space over here. So, negative 4 cubed is negative 4, and, excuse me, one more negative 4, okay? So that's 16 times negative 4, which is negative 64, okay? Let's go back here. We got negative 2. Instead of the negative 4 cubed, we're going to put in the negative 64 plus 3. Negative 2 times negative 64 is positive 128 plus 3, which gives us 131. Okay? So what this means is when our input is negative 4, our output is 131. All right. Let's take a look at example 4 because that's a little different. If g of x equals 3x plus 12, I'm just going to copy that down. Sorry, negative 3x plus 12. For what value of x does g of x equal 6? Okay. What you want to think about here is this 6 an input or is it an output? It's an output because it's not in the parentheses, okay? All right, so we're not just going to simply substitute this in for x. We're going to replace the output, which is g here, with the 6, okay? So we know g of x is 6, so instead of g of x, I'm going to put in 6 equals negative 3x plus 12, all right, which is going to give us an equation to solve. Of course, we're going to subtract 12 from each side. So negative 6 equals negative 3x. Divide everything by negative 3. And 2 is equal to x. There, that's better. All right. What do you think this 2 means here? Well, we knew the output was, what was it, 6, all right? And the question was basically asking us what input gave us an output of 6. So we can summarize what we did here by saying that the input value that gives you an output of 6 is 2, okay? Or even simpler, when the input value is 2, the output value is 6. Okay. Let's turn the page and look at evaluating functions graphically. So we just evaluated them algebraically, meaning by substituting into the function machine or by solving an equation. All right, now we're going to have graphs to work with. Okay, evaluating functions graphically. All right, so again, what we want to keep in mind, okay, input is your x value. Output is your y value, okay? So in number 5, and these 3 questions involve working with this U-shaped graph on the top. So the question says f of 0, we need to know what the value of that is, all right? And just like before, we want to think, is that 0 input or is it output? Well, it's in parentheses, so this is an input, okay? So since this is an input, we know that the value of x is 0. What do we want to find? We want to find the output. We want to find the value of y. So I'm going to go y equals question mark. All right. So what we want to do is look at the graph and go to the spot on the graph where x is 0. Well, let's do that. All right. So you should remember this is our x-axis and this is our y-axis. So where is x 0? Well, on the x-axis, the horizontal axis, we want to go over to 0, which is here, right in the middle, okay? And then we need to find the y value at that spot. To do so, we're going to move vertically because the y-axis is the vertical axis, and we want to try to see where the graph is at that point. So from 0, I have to go down to get to the graph, and I have to go over here, all right? I'm going to ask myself, over here, what's the y value? Well, it's at -1, okay? So that means the value of y is -1, all right? So when x is 0, y is -1, or said another way, that f of 0, our input is 0, our output is -1. All right, let's try another one. F of -2. Okay. So, is -2 an input or output? Well, again, it's an input because it's in the parentheses. Okay, so we can say x is -2, and we're looking for what's y. All right, so we're going to go find -2 on the x-axis, which is right over here. Okay, and then we want to go up or down to meet the graph. So from -2, we're going to have to go down here. All right, now where my pen is at, what's the y value? Well, to get the y values, we go across. Right at this point, the y value you should see is -3. All right, so the y is -3. All right, or f of -2. When our input is -2, our output value or our y value is -3. Okay, let me circle these answers. It's getting a little messy. Okay. All right, number 7, a little different. For what value of x does f of x equal -1? All right, so first step, you want to determine, is that -1 an input or an output? You should have said that it's an output because it is not inside the parentheses, okay? So let's summarize this. Do we know the x? No, because there's no numerical value inside there. I'm going to say x is question mark, y is -1, okay? So we're going to take the information we know, the -1 for the y, and we're going to look that up on the graph. Okay, so since we're working with y, we're going to start on the y-axis, okay? So we're going to use the vertical axis, not the horizontal axis, and go to the spot on the y-axis where the x value is -1. And that's going to be right there, okay? At this point where I'm at right now, we need to ask ourselves, what's the x value? Well, the x value, if we look up, all right, if we right above it, the x value is 0, all right? So for what value of x does f of x equal -1? That's going to be 0, all right? So that's going to, if we write that back in our function notation, that means f of 0 equals -1, all right? We knew this output, and we determined that this is the input that gives us that output. So f of 0 equals -1, okay? All right, so what I'd like you to do is, for the remaining questions on here, we're using this upside down V-shaped graph, okay? I'd like you to go answer number 8 and 9 on your own and pause the video. Okay, welcome back. All right, let's go over 8 and 9. So g of 2, this is going to be an input, all right, because it's inside the parentheses. So that means x is 2, and we need to know y. All right, let's go over to the graph. We're going to look for 2 on the x-axis, all right? X-axis is over here. Y-axis is over here. It's always a good idea to label if it's not already labeled. All right, so where's the x2? That's right over here. Now we need to go meet it on the graph. So if I go, I'm going to have to go up, 1, and right here is where we meet the graph. All right, what's the y value at this spot? Well, if we go over, we're going to see it's +2. Okay. G of -3. So we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to look for -3 on the x-axis. So x is -3, y is something, okay? So on the x-axis, -3 is right over here, and we want to follow the graph either up or down. So we're going to have to go down to get to the graph, and we are right here. So you should be asking yourself, what is the y value at this spot? That's going to be -1.